Alright, how the fuck do I even start this? Okay, so this story involves vampires at one point. So, like Tekking 101 meets Dracula, basically. So if the beginning of this is rather dull and boring, just keep in mind the vampire thing, that's the ending of this, this presentation, alright? I just have to do, like, a little bit of an assembly line of a story to get to the vampires, alright? So just hold on to your butts, or your tits, or whatever you want to hold on to, and we will eventually arrive at vampires, alright? Okay, so maybe a few people know this already, because I've mentioned it before occasionally. If you're new to the channel, you don't know where I'm at or whatever, here's the deal. I live basically out in the middle of bumfuck nowhere, Western PA, Western Pennsylvania, okay? In a tiny little village that's just like no notoriety whatsoever. It's an old coal mining town. Coal mine went bust back in the fucking 60s. You know, all the businesses shut down, you know, and now it's basically just like a residential neighborhood. We got like a small gas station. We got a few bars, really shitty kind of like dive bar sort of places. And most of the residents are just like old people. So, you know, they just go to these bars and they're just like, you know, sitting there drinking, like, oh, friggin' busting my ass all day at the mill and come home and the family. And I don't know. You know, every fucking stereotype that you can probably imagine about, like, you know, very rural, you know, American community, the hills of Appalachia, bunch of old dudes wearing flannel and trucker hats. You know, basically that's where I'm at, okay? And I say this with absolutely no ego, that I am probably the most famous motherfucker that ever came out of this town. When it comes time for me to leave, fucking, oh yeah, there goes Matt. He got 225,000 YouTube subscribers. He has way more. He's the most famous person that ever came out of this town. You know, zero ego when I say that. That's just the case. Okay, so out of all of the bars we have in the town, that are mostly just filled with a bunch of old people just sitting there reminiscing about the good old days and, you know, pounding back some Budweiser or whatever, there's this one bar that's called. It's called Periwinkle's Pizza Parlor. Alright, and this is what I mean when I have to do some assembly line to this story, because I kind of have to sidetrack from the vampires and I kind of have to explain to you the nature of this place, because this kind of just makes the story stranger. And if I didn't explain this to you, I know in the comments below, just like, okay, why the fuck is a shitty dive bar in the middle of Appalachian, Pennsylvania called Periwinkle's Pizza Parlor? How? Okay, well, and I've lived here my whole fucking life, so I'm used to that. I'm used to the name, okay? It's not weird to me anymore, but I understand explaining it to you. Okay, so back when this was a coal mining town, you know, there was a lot of businesses. We had, like, our own butcher and, like, a few restaurants and, like, a grocery store and plus all that shit. When the coal mine shut down, all those businesses fucking shut down, and the buildings where they were at, they're still there, but they're old, dude. These things were built back in the fucking, like, 1920s or whatever, and they really haven't been updated at all. They violate a shit ton of codes. Kids are always going around breaking the fucking windows and shit. They're just, the wood is rotting, the floors are all ripped up, and, for some inconceivable reason, all throughout my life, ever since, like, the late 90s, people have thought that it would be a bright idea to buy one of these old dilapidated buildings and convert it into a pizza parlor. And this has happened like 4 or 5 times in my life. Like, somebody will be like, oh wow, that's a cheap building, I'll spend some money and I'll barely bring it back up to code. I'm not going to renovate it in any major, because you would have to completely basically like tear this building down and build it back up if you wanted to make this actually like a real restaurant, you know, like with real genuine atmosphere and shit. But, you know, just, I'm going to throw some money at it just to barely, you know, bring it back up to code, and I'm going to start my own pizza parlor, and it's going to be great. And then after like 6 months, they have to close down because no one's fucking eating, no one wants to eat at a fucking old rotted freaking building and shit that's like 80 years old. You know, it has no heat in the winter, no air conditioning in the summer. Who would want to possibly eat there? So it shuts down, and then another person is like, well, now I can get that building for even cheap, so I'm gonna buy it. I know Steve's pizza shop didn't go over well, but Greg's pizza shop will definitely go over well. So Greg will buy it, and then he'll bring it back up to code, and he's like, well, I'll dust off all the pizza ovens and shit are here, so I'll start my own pizza parlor. Then 6 months later, his will shut down, and then Joe will be like, oh, Joe's pizza parlor. This has fucking happened like 4 or 5 times in my life. It's like this place is shut down and then reopened, all with different owners, and they've all fucking failed. I don't know why they didn't get the message. It's just weird, okay? So finally, when I was like 10 or 11 years old, so this is like in 2003, 2004, a guy named Norm buys this place. And he does almost the exact same thing as the other guys did, except I guess he had a little bit of a spin on it. He's like, all right, instead of doing the same thing as the last 4 people that own this piece of shit building and they went out of business, I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna sell pizza, but I'm also gonna try to make it like a family restaurant. I guess that was like one of Norm's like big dreams, is to run a family restaurant, all right? But the problem is he didn't really know how to do anything he doesn't know how to run a restaurant, you know? And you know, it would be one thing if like at least the pizzas from these places were like good quality, you know, if he was making like a really good fucking pizza, but these pizzas were like subpar, you know? They were just like, you know, frozen pizza in a fucking oven or whatever. Like these people weren't chefs, they don't know how to do shit. You know, they were just weighing in there over their heads here. Well, Norm decided, you know, I'm going to make this a family restaurant. So he sets up some tables. He gets a few racks of like candy and shit for kids. He gets like a pinball machine and some arcade games. Dumped probably way more money into this than anybody else that owned it. But not enough money to actually renovate the place. And it was also like a movie rental store. This was back in like the early 2000s, before like Netflix and shit were a thing and the internet was really big. So video rental stores were you could still turn a profit with them. And I remember going there a few Friday nights with my dad, and we'd rent like some movies and shit and have some pizza. And I don't remember it being so bad, but then again, I was like fucking 10 at the time. So, you know, I wasn't really paying attention to a lot of that stuff back then. I do remember one time I went to go and rent the movie Bug's Life, and they gave me the movie Ants instead. And, yeah, that was... I remember watching it, and I was thinking, all right, this is Ants. I wanted Bug's Life, but Ants is a good second, I guess. But anyway, so eventually... Oh, and by the way, the name Periwinkle's Pizza Parlor, Norm had like a 5-year-old daughter who, I guess... he let name his fucking pizza parlor. I don't know why, but he did. And his daughter also drew like a mascot for it, and the mascot was just like an amorphous purple blob with like a smiley face, and that was Periwinkle. You know, like, you know, what the fuck's his name? The Grimace from McDonald's, you know, the big purple dude. Imagine Grimace, except drawn in a very, like, oblong kind of shape. Honestly, kind of reminded me of Lumpy Space Princess from Adventure Time. Just imagine like a really shittily drawn Lumpy Space Princess, and there you got fucking Periwinkle. And they had a fucking sign. He fucking painted a sign with Periwinkle's Pizza Parlor. I guess he let his daughter draw the fucking Periwinkle mascot. Like, hey, everybody, come to Periwinkle's. So he hangs the fucking sign up. And, you know, it was there, and it was like a family restaurant, but no one was coming to fucking eat at this restaurant. You know, people would come to rent movies and shit, and it eventually, you know, he had like a small bar area in here, and eventually the pizza parlor basically just changed into a bar over the years. You know, it stopped selling pizza, it stopped renting movies, he scrapped gave up on his whole fucking family restaurant dream, and it's just like, fuck it, I'm just gonna run a bar. You know, and at least, hey, that was actually probably honestly a good career move, because the place is still open, you know, like till this day. You know, it's just a shitty bar that is run by Norm, and he's just a brittle shell of what he used to be. You know, he starts off all happy and fun back in the early 2000s. I'm gonna start my own fucking family restaurant. Now he's just a sad old man in like his fucking his late 60s or whatever, and he's just like, fucking Budweiser and fucking but it keeps the place open, I guess. You know, the steady stream of older men and women coming in to drink every night. So I was down there. I was down there the other day because it's like right next to the gas station in my town, and I was there getting gas the other day. You know, I was coming back from work, and I'm there. I'm getting gas, And I look over at Periwinkle's Pizza Parlor, and out in front of the bar, there was this really tall dude, like a fucking tall dude with long black hair that was also partly blue, dyed blue, like not just like a dark blue, like navy blue or whatever, like a bright turquoise blue in a trench coat, because it's winter, you know, trench coat, boots, fucking red shirt, and I don't even think, I haven't seen these in years. The pants he was wearing were like parachute pants, but they were decked out in like a shit ton of belt buckles. I remember there was a guy when I started high school back in like, when I was a freshman in high school back in like 2007, I remember there was a senior student that wore pants like that, but ever since like that 10 years ago, I haven't seen a guy wear those. But these giant like parachute pants with like belt buckles and shit all over them, like super fucking like 2000s emo, and he's out smoking a fucking cigarette. Right, so I'm there pumping my gas. I'm like just a little ways away from the bar, and he kind of just looks over at me smoking his cigarette, like. And we do that thing that guys do. Guys, if you've all done this at one point. Girls, you might be aware of this, but let me explain. Guys have this thing called the head nod. And it's just this moment of, like, acknowledgement. Like, when, like, you're a guy, and I'm a guy, and we don't know, we're just meeting each other's gaze, and if we stare too long, I guess that's a sign that it's, like, weird or gay or whatever, so it's just like that's what we do, the head nod shit. So I finish filling up my car, and I go inside to get some stuff in the convenience store, and I'm in there, I'm buying stuff, and as I'm walking out of the convenience store to go back to my car and drive back home, because it's like right down the street from my house, the guy, the tall dude, he's walking over to the convenience store, right, as I'm walking out, and he stops, and he looks at me, and he's like, yo, Matt, and I stop, and I'm like, okay, I've heard that voice before, but I don't know who that is. I turn around, I get a better look at this dude, and it has been the better part of like 7 or 8 years since I've seen this guy, ever since high school. I have not seen this guy since I graduated high school. And I've talked about this guy before. This is Larry. Okay, this is a guy named Larry I went to high school with. And the thing with Larry is Larry was the weird, goth, emo dude I went to high school with that, the story I told about him before was that he was really into, like, monster makeup and, like, costume design from, like, you know, horror movies. Like, that's what he was into. And Halloween one year at my school, Larry went as a vampire, except, like, he wasn't, like, pretending, like, bleh, I'm a Dracula, I like to suck your blood, bleh. You're not like that, because we were all wearing, like, goofy costumes. Like, you know, I remember a kid wore, like, dressed as Fred Flintstone one year. I remember when my one friend went as Sarah Palin, because this was back during, like, 2008 when we were, like sophomores. This was during the election with, like, McCain and Palin. I remember, yeah, so, but then we were all having fun with it. It was fucking, like, we were in high school, and you're allowed to dress up, and it's fucking Halloween. We were having fun with it, but Larry, man, Larry was fucking... He was, like, acting like a straight-up fucking Nosferatu, like, from the fucking, like, Max Schreck kind of Nosferatu. Like, he came to school, he had his fucking face, he was painted all super pale, like, he looked like a goddamn vampire. He was talented using, like, the monster makeup shit. So he had his fucking eyes, like, he did, like, these crack things under his eyes, you know? And he fucking had genuine fucking vampire teeth. Not like shitty vampire teeth you would find at like a dollar store. I'm talking like these are actual vampire teeth, like made out of marble, which you might be wondering he shouldn't be allowed to bring those to school. And you're right, he wasn't. But, you know, he did. Anyway, you know, he just put them in his fucking mouth and he just walking around all day. Didn't speak a word to anybody. He was in character all fucking day. He literally, like, avoided windows, like, cause light coming in from the window. He literally was avoiding windows and shit. He was like that sold on it, you know. And I don't know. Beyond this point, I don't know, because it was a rumor. But I remember I was talking to my one friend's like near the end of the day, and there was a rumor going around that he was sitting next to this woman in class, and he tried to like bite her. You know, like, as a vampire, like, I must feed on you, my darling. And it really fucking just creeped the entire class out and shit. And he had to get sent to the office and everything. Don't know if that was really the case. But that's what I heard. Okay. And this all happened over a decade ago. This was all back when I was like a sophomore in high school. So, you know, I graduate high school and I continue on with my life. Haven't seen this dude in fucking forever. And here he is at fucking Periwinkle's Pizza Parlor. I'm like, okay, sup, Larry? How you been, man? fuck? So, he's sitting there smoking a fucking cigarette. He's like, yeah, I thought that was you. I thought you were, that was you. Haven't seen you in forever. How you been? I like your YouTube channel. And he's like, oh, you watch my YouTube channel. That's crazy. And he's like, yeah, I found out about it a while ago. I'm like, man, that's crazy. So I'm asking him. I'm like, so what are you doing here, man? What are you visiting or what's going on? And he's like, no, man. I bought a house here in town recently. I just moved here to town. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense because this town, like I said, it's pretty fucking shitty. Really cheap kind of housing, so a lot of newlyweds and shit move here as like their first house and before they get money and then they saved up and then they move away. So I was like, all right, that's cool and everything. He's like, yeah, I moved here with my girlfriend. I'm like, oh, girlfriend, okay, cool. I had a little moment where I'm like, okay, here I am, 25, almost a 25-year-old, no girlfriend, but here's Larry, tall, 6'2", Nosferatu, blue hair, giant belt buckle pants, smoking a cigarette outside Periwinkle's Pizza Parlor. He at least has a girlfriend. All right, well, whatever. And I'm like, hey man, nice to see you, man, but it's fucking cold out here. I gotta get going. He's like, no, you come inside, have a beer with me, man. And I'm like, I really don't drink, Larry. I'm sorry, I don't. He's like, nah, come on. It's been forever. Let me tell you about this stuff. And I'm like, all right. And he seemed like, I don't know, because I wasn't I didn't know much about this guy. I wasn't like his best friend back in high school. I talked to him occasionally, but we weren't besties and shit. He was kind of a social outcast. Well, he really was a social outcast. Like, if we're gonna have like a pyramid of like social standings in high school, like the popular kids are on top. I was like maybe 2 or 3 tiers from the bottom of the pyramid. And Larry would have been, like, in the crypt, like, 1,000 meters under the pyramid. You know what I mean? Like, Larry would have been on the bottom of this shit. He had very few friends. He had, like, 1 or 2 goth buddies he usually would pal around with. But that was pretty much it. There was a rumor going around he was gay, of course, because that was, like, everybody's rumors. Like, oh, he's weird, therefore he's gay. He's weird, therefore he's a transvestite or whatever. So all these rumors were spiraling around. But I talked to him occasionally, whenever I'm in the lunch line with him or whatever. So he's like, but he's really like, come on, I want to talk to you about some stuff, man. It's been forever. And I'm like, okay, sure. I can't stay long, though. I got a thing, man. I gotta do a video. I gotta do this thing later tonight. I gotta do a live stream or whatever. And he's like, all right. So we go in, and I haven't been in this fucking place in years. Like, ever since I was a little kid with my dad renting a movie on, like, Friday night. It has changed completely. The lighting in this place is, like, super dim. Just, like, the sadness of everybody's collective souls, gathered together in just this one place. There's, like, a dim bulb. There's, like, bzz, 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 fucking, tiny little jukebox in the corner, playing like a really like just down, like really fucking shitty country music or whatever on like permanent repeat. And then there's fucking Norm behind the bar, just fucking face lines drawn all over it, like he just got punched in the face by life. Just like, what do you want? And Larry's like, I'll take a Yingling, Norm, and gives him a fucking Yingling. And then I'm like, I don't want anything to drink. And Norm's just like, well, I don't give a shit. And he just walks away. It was like so dead in Norm's eyes. I'm like, what do you want? He just kind of points at me like, what do you want? I'm like, I don't drink. And I'm just like, And he just walks away, down to the other end of the bar where he talks to some of these guys. And I'm sitting there with Larry. And at first, Larry's just talking about my YouTube shit. Larry's like, so I hear, how you doing? I've been watching some of your content. And I'm like, oh yeah, what do you like? Do you like One Piece? And he's like, yeah, I watch One Piece every now and then. I watch some of your Dragon Ball Super shit. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Larry, he's like into anime. Okay, fine. So we talk about that for a little while. I just talk about it's weird to always discuss my YouTube channel with people I know in like real life. Because it's just like, I don't know, I should be proud of it, I should be like, this is something but it's just weird, because I don't want to sit there and just gush and be like, oh yes, I'm so popular on the internet. I don't like to do that, it's weird, so I'm just like, yeah, it's fun, it's, pays the bills, I guess. And I'm like, so what's up with you, Larry? Just kind of like, okay, how am I gonna figure out a way, like, I'm thinking like, I'm thinking like, okay, 15, maybe 20 minutes of my time I can give to Larry, and then I gotta make up an excuse. I gotta you ever do that where you like check your phone? I'm like, oh shit, everyone's dead. Get down here. Okay, I gotta go, Larry. Apparently everybody's collectively dead. I gotta go. But I'm like, all right, I'll give him I'm a nice guy. I'll give him 15 minutes of my time or whatever. And I ask him how you been, man? It was since high school. And he's sitting there. And he's like, well, man, you know what? After high school, it wasn't a lot of shit. Had to go through a lot of shit. I had some problems with some painkillers at some point. And I'm like, oh, shit. Is this just going to be I feel for the dude, but it's just going to be a sob story. Oh, man, I had these kind of problems and these kind of problems and then these kind of problems and then these kind of problems. Then I thought stuff was going to get better. Then I had these kind of problems. Now, look. I don't mean to be a dick, but as somebody that works in retail, there are people that literally come into the store and I feel like they just want people to talk to about how shitty their life is. So they'll come into the store, they'll buy one thing, they'll buy here's a pack of Snickers. Anyway, my dog died and my mom's in the hospital and my wife left me and now I broke my leg and that's just all they do. And it's just I feel for them. I really do. I really feel for them. But what the fuck am I supposed to do about this? I'm not great at helping people with their, I'm not a psychiatrist. I can't talk to you about, okay, is this the whole reason why he dragged me in here? Was just to be I just want to tell you how shitty my life is. But, he eventually that's not what he does, though. He starts off like that. I thought that's where he was gonna go. He's like, I fucking had problems with my life, and painkillers and shit. But then, about 3 years ago, man, I, taking a swig of his beer and smoking and shit. He's like, about 3 years ago, I just finally decided to just stop pretending, I just finally decided to just be my fucking self. And you know what? That's what I like about your channel, man. That's what he fucking said to me. He's like, that's what I like about your fucking channel. You're whoever you are. You act just exactly who you are. You don't fucking sugarcoat it, because I knew you from high school. That's how you acted in high school. You were a weird guy, and you're a weird guy on camera. And you know what? That's how I was. And I was like, you know what? I started being who I am, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. That's always cool, man. So what's up? What are you doing? What you do? Get a hobby or something? And he's like, nah, man, I'm a fucking vampire now. And I had this moment where, because he said it deadpan, and I'm like, he's like, I'm a fucking vampire now, man. And I'm like, huh. Now look, okay. I'll roll with that, I don't know how you would respond to that. If someone just straight up tells you I'm a fucking vampire, be like, yeah, everyone's dead, gotta go. Or you just be like, huh? What? Vampire? What is that a band you're in or something? But I'm like, okay, vampire, sure, we'll roll with that. Okay, oh, fucking vampire, that sounds awesome. And he's like, yeah, man. He's like, do you know what an otherkin is? And I'm like, okay, now I get it. That makes sense. If you don't know what you know what? I'm not even going to describe otherkin for you, because this is already a long-ass video. Go look it up. Go look up what otherkin is. But basically, to put this in perspective, this is not like he's playing Vampire the Masquerade, like a LARP, or this is not like he's playing a game, basically. For all intents and purposes, Larry, genuinely believes to his core that, yes, I am an actual vampire. I'm not pretending to be a vampire for a game. I'm not doing this because of some just role-playing thing or some social experiment. No, I am a motherfucking vampire, and I suck blood, and I steal fucking life forces from people, and I turn into a goddamn bat, and that's what I do. I'm a fucking vampire. And I will stand by that. Now, I've met otherkin before in the past. He's not the first one I've met. And, you know what? I like having conversations with otherkin, because I think most of society just thinks they're just straight up weirdos. And I admit they can get a little out there depending on what they identify as. But you know what? Some of the most interesting conversations I've ever had in my life have come from people that are otherkin, because it's this entirely new perspective on existence that they create. Now, I don't believe in vampires. I don't believe in ghosts. There's ghostkin too. There's people, but usually it's I'm catkin, or I'm dogkin, or I'm wolfkin, or I'm fictional characters I'm dragonkin. Now, I don't personally have any stock in that, but hey, it's a free country. You do what you do, So I'm like, all right. and he starts telling me about being a fucking vampire and shit, and he's just like, I was living in this apartment building, and right as soon as I started to realize this, I started to be dedicated to it. As soon as I started to like, I have my sleep schedule, changed up. I just woke up a little while ago, and I'm thinking about this because I'm like, oh, you just woke up a little while ago and you're already in a bar drinking. Okay, that seems like other problems you're dealing with there, Larry. But he's just like, I'm nocturnal now. After I stayed out of the light, I just felt so much better. It really did like waken my soul. It's something it's totally real. And then, I shit you not, the capper off on this whole, like, I'm really a vampire thing, like, the thing that made him, like, seriously believe this, his landlord, who was an old dude that lived upstairs from him at this old apartment building he lived in, he had a landlord, and he fucking passed away. He died. And Larry was fucking convinced that he had used his vampiric essence, as soon as he realized who he was and he started living as a fucking vampire, all nocturnal and shit, like, he was convinced that he had stolen the life essence away from this dude, and he died, and he was like, I'm a fucking vampire, and the guy was like, the guy was like old, he had like some heart problems, and he was like on a respirator and shit, so he probably just died of natural causes. I don't think, like, Larry killed the dude, or I fucking hope not. I hope that he did not break into this old man's apartment and, like, shit. But I looked into it. He seemed to be, like, an old dude. So, probably just passed away of natural causes. Like, I looked up his obituary and shit, and I'm like, okay, did he die from acute blood? The coroner finds some bite marks on his neck. But no, Larry was convinced, though, and he was telling me this story of how he eventually, he was joining these groups, and he met other people that identify as vampires, and he met this girl named Lilith. Her name was Lilith. That's what he said it was. Probably not her real name, because Lilith was a character that was apparently, like, created, like, she was the first woman created by God, but then she went up against God's will or something, and she was cursed, and then that's why God created Eve from Adam's rib, because so Eve could be more subservient or some shit. Like, that's a story that kind of just gets thrown around. So Lilith is, like, usually regarded a lot of times in fiction as, like, the world's, like, the first vampire, like the first succubus or the first demon or shit like that. So it's like, yeah, I met this girl named Lilith, and Larry goes into describe, and this is like for a solid 5 fucking minutes. Larry goes to describe in detail his sex life with Lilith. All right, now look, I'm okay with talking. Hey, you want to talk about being a vampire? That's interesting to me. I could sit there and listen to that. But I had a lot of questions I wanted to ask him. I wanted to ask him about, like, the transformation thing. Like, so do you turn into a bat, or like, do you drink blood and shit? But he just goes into detail about the freaky fucking sex shit that he gets up into with his fucking girlfriend. He's just like, oh yeah, man, it's all like this sensual thing, and it's all like biting and shit, and he shows me all these fucking bite marks on his neck and shit that I'm like sitting there like, okay, wow, that's nuts. So this goes on, and he gets into detail, guys, all right? And he's just like, he's like, hey, do you want to meet her? And I'm like, you know what? I would love to, but I really got to go. I really got to do this thing tonight. So, I'll see you later. And that's the point where I'm basically very politely, like, just kind of move my bar stool and just get up. And I'm like, yeah, man, I'm like, check, yeah, man, I got to go. And he's like, all right, nice to meet you. Hey, I want you guys to come. I want you to come down. I want you to meet me, like Lilith in our place and everything. We can chill out. We can play like some Magic the Gathering or some shit. And I'm like, I'm more of a Yu-Gi-Oh guy, but I'm like, whatever. And before I go though, before I'm like leaving, as I'm walking out, because he's one of those guys that just will not let you leave, as like, I get off the stool and I'm standing up now. He's still sitting down. He's still like, oh, by the way, as I'm walking out, he's like, oh, by the way, you want to see, oh, I forgot to show you a picture of her. I forgot to show you a picture of Lilith. And I'm like, okay, fine. Because I'm a little curious. Like, all right, who is this girl? So Larry, takes out his fucking phone, this giant fucking cavernous trench coat he has. He opens it up, and there's like a bunch of fucking pockets sewn into this thing. Like, this, he did not buy this. Like, he maybe bought the trench coat, and he personally sewed, because he's like into that sort of stuff. So he's like personally sewed a bunch of shit onto this thing, a bunch of like patches and shit on this thing. Also, minor caveat to this, but it also reeked reeked of fucking marijuana, like just pots us out. I'm like, I'm okay with marijuana. I'm okay with it. I'm just adding it as a caveat to the story. I think it should be illegal and all across the board. But as a caveat, so he takes out his fucking phone. It's an old flip phone too, from like the early 90s. I guess vampires are behind the curve. You know, these aren't like the future vampires. You know, these are like old school. Like, oh, there's a vampire. He pulls out his fucking flip phone and then shows me a picture of her, and she is fucking hot. Like, imagine. Okay, go and Google search "sexy vampire girl big tits," and that's Lilith. Now, I don't know if that was his actual girlfriend or if he literally just did Google like sexy vampire chick big tits and then just put that on his phone. But that he showed me a picture of her and I'm like, hot damn, you are you are one lucky vampiric son bitch. And he's like, yeah, I know, right? And he's just like, oh, nice meeting you. Just talk later. I'm like, yeah, later. So I walk out of Periwinkle's Pizza Parlor. I get in my car and I drive home. And I'm just sitting there like, what the fuck just happened? What was that conversation I was just part of? And I was like gonna sit down and do a video about it right away, but I was just like, I need a few days to process what the hell just happened. Because, you know, that is such a weird thing, right? So, yeah, I don't know. I might go up to Larry's house someday and I might have a sequel to this story. You know, like, holy shit, this is Larry's fucking house and hot fucking girlfriend and they're vampires. The only thing, though, is I'm a little afraid of is that they genuinely are into the vampire thing. And he mentioned, like, feeding and shit. So, I'm thinking that if I go to his house, he might actually, like, I'm thinking he watches my videos and he's aware that I'm like talking about girls with like I like big boobs, so he like using that to lure me into his house so he can fucking like drug me and tie me down and fucking strip me naked and suck and like not suck my blood because he's not a fucking vampire, but try to, you know. And so I don't know, what do you think? Should I risk it? Leave a comment in the description below on if I should or not. If I should journey on to the vampire's den. I made that entire story up. Night, everybody.